Alright, hello. Chainsaw Man chapter 230 came out today, and we are going to talk about it. So there's actually a lot more meat in this chapter than the past couple, so I feel there's a good amount to talk about. So, to start with the chapter, Yoru asked Denji why he thought she spared the dove from a couple chapters ago, to which Denji responded that he brings up power and that she was a devil who tried to kill him and had a soft spot for animals, and he wanted Yoru to be like power. Um, he wanted a friend, essentially, to which Yoru says that he wants a friend who he can bang, and she is willing to let him do that. She gives him consent, and then she gives him consent on Asa's behalf, which I'm not sure is really legit because she looks very sketchy right now, and she has taken advantage of Asa's body throughout the entirety of part two. So, how true her consent is, I'm not entirely sure. She does have access to Asa's inner consciousness, so maybe she's telling the truth, but she could just be lying. So, in Denji's position, it might be wiser for him to really do his due diligence, do his research on if Asa really gave her consent. But whatever. Um, because it doesn't matter, because they get ganked by a bunch of insect devils. And here is a really big, I think, a big misstep by Fujimoto, because before Denji turns back into Denji, Yoru fed Denji blood from, she picked some blood off the ground and then gave it to Denji for him to regenerate, because Denji last chapter was missing his lower half. But then this chapter he regenerates, he reverts back to Denji, but he got pants, he got shorts. What the heck? He should be like bare balls naked, but he grew back shorts from blood. That does not make a whole lot of sense. I feel if Fujimoto was like truly an artist, he would have drawn Denji with his everything down below exposed, dick and balls, all of it. But I think this is a failure on Fujimoto's part. But anyways, we cut to India Fumiko, who calls Canadian Fumiko because the bats in India are eating people, and she confirms with Canadian Fumiko that insects are eating the Canadians. So, Fumiko, she elaborates, because lives now no longer end. The insects now reproduce a lot more, or rather than a lot more, they reproduce at the same rate, but they don't die. And because insects and some other animals reproduce really fast, they just swarmed like the whole planet, and they need to eat, so they started eating the humans of the planet. Which explains why the Locust Devil from a couple chapters ago, let me see if I have it on the same lineup, which is why the Locust Devil from like 3 chapters ago is just super buffed, and why all the devils this chapter are insect devils for the most part. So the insects can now reproduce infinitely, and because they don't die, they are incredibly powerful. Fumiko also elaborated that there's apparently a council of Fumikos that meet once in a while, apparently once per year it seems, and the Fumikos are all a little different in some way because they have different fears. So either because their life experience is apart, made them grow into different people, or because the people that Fumiko's take over have their own subconscious still in their head somewhere. So the Fumikos are getting some more lore. But anyways, we cut back to Denji, who Yoru tells Denji that they need to run because they're low on blood. She cuts back to Asa to tell Denji that as well. So whenever Yoru wants to get Denji to do something, she lets Asa out. And Denji pulls on this cord because he wants to fuck, but then because the devils are in the way, he threatens to kill them. Cutting back to the catchphrase he did on the very first chapter, and even the panel, the way the faces are drawn are very similar. So Fujimoto obviously referenced the first chapter to draw that. But because the Death Devil is no longer around, Denji forget what he was going to say, and then we end the chapter. So, very clever way to end the chapter and to call back to the first chapter, so I like that a lot. Let's see. So some notes, some takeaway from the chapter. Like I said earlier, it does explain why the Locust Devil was so strong from 3-ish chapters ago. We also get a bit more on the Fumikos. They have a whole council of Fumikos that interact with each other every so often. One thing I didn't talk about earlier is that Fumiko seemed to have more knowledge than everyone else, and that she does remember. She feels like she almost remember the idea of death, because she does mention that lives now have no end. So that's like 90% death, pretty much. So Fumiko does have more inherent knowledge than the other characters, possibly because of her. There's like 200 of her. So I also like the thematic narrative of this chapter. There's like because the chapter is titled Sex and Selection, and it's yet another, I guess, another narrative on the consequences of sex, because the reproduction of the insects are now fucking over everyone, essentially. I would say there's also a bit of a biblical theme going on here as well, because in the Bible, locusts, they do be fucking shit up throughout various disasters, including Revelations, I believe. So the apocalypse in the Bible ends with at some point, I think there's like a bunch of locusts somewhere that just eats everything, which is kind of what's happening now in our current Chainsaw Man apocalypse. And the last takeaway for me is the idea of pestilence, because in the Four Horsemen, they were never really named in the Bible. They just like describe what they look like and what they do. And the Control Conquest Horsemen there's like another interpretation of them as pestilence. I guess because conquest is like too similar to war, so later interpretations of Revelations took it to be like pestilence, which is what I feel a lot of modern Bible studiers say, pestilence as a horseman. And you know, I feel it does make sense, because conquest is like 80% the same thing as war. So it's like, eh. So in this case, we have insects eating everything, so maybe we will get, because Denji and Yoru did say before that there's a possibility of the next Control Horseman coming back as the apocalypse is happening. So maybe the next iteration of the Control Devil won't be a Control Devil at all, but a Pestilence Devil. But yes, that's about what I have for the chapter. Let me see some of the comments. Yo, this chapter was fire. I did enjoy this chapter a lot more than the past like 10. Let's see, or what he told the zombie devil, if you're gonna get in the way, then die. But death is gone, so Denji forget, yes. And then it's also what Makima told him for right before she ripped out his heart, or that was actually Pochita's heart, but she thought that was Denji's heart. So that was Makima's last taunt of sorts to him. The short stuff is very Fujimoto. He made the same with Reze for some reason. He does that frequently. You don't really know why. Well, for Reze, you can assume that she may have stolen some panties off a female public safety officer, or maybe one of the male public safety officers. We don't kink shame on this stream. But for like off out of story reason, it's that he can't show butt cheeks of women in Shonen Jump. But now that he's in Shonen Plus, Jump Plus, he may have more freedom to do what he wants. I feel he could have gotten away with Denji showing his butt cheeks here if he like hides the PP. But alas, well, actually, because we seeing that Yoru's powers, her new powers, did let her generate clothing. So this could be a new feature of Denji's upgraded transformation, where when he like reverts, he gain shorts, but it might make sense for him to also gain upper torso clothing. But he think he's about to bang, so he's not doing that. In that case, he probably wouldn't have shorts either. I don't know about that. After part 2 took whatever family Denji had, him looking for sex, this is one way of obtaining or retain bonds. Him asking for sex is basically saying, please love me, please don't leave me alone. Yes, that makes sense, but I also think this is a much older thing. He has always been looking for a partner, and now he just understood he wants a friend with benefits. I don't think Denji's really about friends with benefits, but that being said, I haven't been the biggest fan of like Denji and chasing sex in part 2. I feel like the natural progression of part 1 was like him realizing his self-worth, and then in part 2, I don't know, but we'll figure that. But I don't think he's like after Yoru Asa for the physicalness of it, is what I'm trying to say. Let's see, where am I? Death is so involved that makes sense that there are a few leftovers, similar to how Ear's leftovers remain after erasing it. Oh, I guess you're referring to when I was talking about Umiko's memories of end of life. This does make me think of because back in part 1, Makima mentioned there's like 4 other possibilities to the end of life other than death. My imagination is not that good, so I can't really think of what other possibilities there are. Maybe they ascend to different dimensions. But regardless, yeah, it makes sense because death is relatively recent, so there's some residual memories. But I do feel it's more impactful on Fumiko than some of the other characters. By the way, the stream hasn't started. Is that true? Oh no, I'm pretty sure I've been streaming. Have I not? Am I being gaslit? No, it works. You gaslight me. God damn it. Yes, it did start refresh your browser. Oh, I was so close to restarting OBS. Control right now would be so good since she can transform, where she can control all the insects and all the lower life forms. Yes, that's a good point. Although the Control Devil's powers don't seem to be like always consistent, because she had control over everything that she thought was inferior, whereas Nayuta had like three chains and that's it. So I maybe the next iteration of the Control Devil might be different, but or maybe if Nayuta had lived, she would have eventually got to the point that Makima got to, because Makima did make use of chains later in part one, because like she attached a bunch of chains from her hip to like a bunch of public safety guys and their corpses. So maybe Nayuta would have eventually evolved to Makima's powers. Denji is held by Makima after undoing his transformation in part 1, so holding Yoru mirrors that. Yes, because in this case he lets go of Yoru to do his thing. Hmm. By the way, 30-year anniversary of Evangelion show drawings by the author, one of them showing Asuka and Shinji with a kid. Alright, I'm gonna look at that after I finish the stream, because I looked at some pictures of the newer Evangelion movies, and there's a couple characters that I don't recognize. I know they did like a remake of it, but there's like a girl with glasses and an Eva suit, and she's with Shinji too. So everyone's with Shinji. So I don't know what's going on there. I did not know what happened in the original Evangelion. But I'll watch the movies at some point. The Makima was a seasoned fighter and had the government training her. Nayuta was a beginner. It's like a white belt fighting a black belt. Yeah, for sure, because Kishibe did kind of imply that Makima was kidnapped by the Japanese government. But going back to there's something from last chapter that like I thought was interesting, which is the idea of the horsemen. They, instead of like spawning into a human being, they just possessed like existing humans and then take them over. So the idea of Nayuta just possessing some random Chinese girl and then Kishibe kidnapping her to Japan, that's just a very absurd thing in my mind. But also Nayuta was a child, maybe she didn't realize her powers worked that way yet. Yes, and I think it's like going from on that logic, I think like Denji raising her also kind of how do you say it? Like nerfed her a little bit, right? Because Denji didn't want her to do her devil shenanigans. He wanted her to like go to school and whatever. So Denji really wasn't encouraging of her using her powers. Let's see. Evangelion has multiple timelines. So one, Shinji ended with the glasses girl. Multiple. So there's like more than two. You know what? That might make sense because when I briefly brought up like I did like a video kind of entertaining the idea that Chainsaw Man might have like a time reset, people would be like, "Oh, that's like Evangelion," and then I watched Evangelion, and there's no time reset as far as I can tell. So maybe that happens in the movies potentially. But speaking of which, I really don't think my time travel, time reset thing is gonna happen because I just remember that a couple chapters ago, Fumiko did because when I think when Yoru summoned Michigan, we had like a panel dialogue of like Fumiko narrating from the future where she does her reports on the battle between Denji and Yoru. So I doesn't it doesn't seem like that's going to happen, the time travel thing, unless the time travel happens after, or maybe because Fumiko has special memories as maybe a feature of this chapter. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Let's see. Locust Devil before was a foreshadowing of insects taking over. Yes, yes, that's actually something that Fujimoto was cooking with. Really good. Which I was surprised by because I was losing faith in Fujimoto. Because there's like plot, not holes. Well, there was one big plot hole like 30 chapters ago with the timeline, but there's like I'm just saying, like going from the direction of the story, I wasn't expecting this big of thought and detail put into the Locust Devil. Because, like, when you say it, it makes a lot of sense. Because insects can't die and they multiply a lot, so it makes sense. Yeah, yeah. So I do like this chapter a lot. Da da da. So after Denji eating it, now the rest of the insects caught up. Yes. Um, I'm trying to think of like solutions for Denji outside of spitting out the Death Devil. Because I guess in theory he could eat all the insect devils, which would be on brand for Denji's diet. Um, but the insect devils are like really strong right now, so he probably couldn't do it physically. That does remind me of like this study they did about just killing all mosquitoes on the planet and how it wouldn't actually be negative in any way. Hmm. Da-da-da. Let's see. The three devils floating were not insect designs; they might be primordial devils. Yes, there were a couple devils after the initial insect gank. There's like one with a hole in its face, one with like a moon and a bunch of arms hanging under it, and then one with like one that looks like a bionicle. Let me see if I can find the panel for that. Yeah, they did bring us. They did make uh special scene for these three for their entrance. I don't really know what to make of these because they didn't have entrances as grand as like the Falling in the Darkness Devil, but then again, neither did the Aging Devil, so I guess they could be primordials. We saw a Crescent Moon Devil a couple chapters ago, actually, when Yoru summoned like a bunch of them, but that one was thicker, and that one didn't have like arm cloak. This one reminds me of one of the God hands in Berserk. I forgot the name of it. And I don't know what to make of this one in general. I don't necessarily know if they're primordials, because when primordials show up, like every other devil just scram. So I don't know if the insect devils would stick around if these are indeed primordials. But maybe the insect devils, they are now a lot buffer, so maybe they are feeling confident that they can hang with the primordials. Who knows? Da-da-da, I was also losing faith, but now you're hopeful. I feel the Fujimoto like to do short stories more like his one-shots. Yeah, I do think Fujimoto is better with shorter formats. Even like part one, he had like a beginning and an ending in mind, so that's why I felt it is a lot more cohesive. Maybe he just needs more time to tune up his serialization skills. I do think that's like the normal, that's like what I would expect out of other series though. I feel like it's like the norm for series, because for a lot of the other mangas I read, I do feel like 100 chapters is the turning point of like quality. Because I used to like, let's see, what else do I like? I mean, I still do like, I was gonna say Kaguya wants to be confessed to around like 160, 70-ish is when the stories started to go the other way. But then again, the author for that did like a second series in Oshinoko simultaneously, so that could have affected the quality of it. I also really liked Shokugeki no Soma back in the day, and after like chapter 120-ish, the story also took a dive. But the point I'm trying to make is that like I feel for the schedule for weekly serializations, it's a lot of deadlines and like a lot of time constraints to really come up with a story that's perfect from like the beginning to end. But anyways, we were talking about the Moon Devil. The Moon Devil design remind you of the violent star that can kill you that Makima mentioned. Oh, that could be it. Because there was it wasn't exactly killing you, I don't think. It was like it drives you to insanity if you look at it. Yeah, that could be an interesting idea. I guess the arms and the well, it does have like a bunch of mechanical parts to it, which could be, I don't know. It's a good idea. I think it could be like astronaut related. Um, yeah, that's a good call though. The crescent moon reminds you of Silk Song. You're just guessing it's another insect. It could be, could be. You need to go, but thanks for the live. All right, thank you for showing up. I'm actually almost done, anyways. There's not too much more I think I can talk about. But overall, I think this is a solid, really nice chapter with a bunch of content to go over. And yeah, I think there's a break next week. Let me double check on that. Because the end of February always messes with my timeline. Yeah, next chapter comes out March 10th, which is 2 weeks from now. So yeah. That's about all I have for tonight. Anyways, thanks for showing up in the chat, and I'll see you guys next week.